Yo, welcome to the show, BroMob. We're your hosts, Chad and Brian. Today is Tuesday, October 1st, and Brian, oh my God, it's October already. What is going on? Week 4 of fantasy, of football, of everything has come to an end. Baseball has come to an end for some people like you, who is a Cubs fan. So that's very unfortunate for your life, really. Luckily, the Brewers made it in. So I have nothing to complain about. But, BroMob, we are done with week 4. We're moving into week 5 of fantasy football season. And man, it was another crazy week.
Yeah, here's the deal. It's pumpkin spice season.
Oh my.
Yay.
He's so basic.
Pumpkin spice.
The most basic there is.
I'm the basic of basic. Yeah, man, it was a good week. Pulled out another victory in our league of record, and actually, I think I'm going to win across the board, except for our dynasty league. I continue to play terrible in that league. So, but hey, if Juju Smith-Schuster could put up like a 32er tonight, hey, it'd help me out a little bit.
He's off to a bad start.
That's what I need.
He's off to a bad start with that nice little fumble. So, good luck with that.
Not good. Not good.
Not looking too goo for Juju. Terribly sorry.
For Jews.
I will take that one back, BroMob. I did not say it. My bad. All right. Well, BroMob, we've got so much to go over this week. We've got our week 4 fantasy recap, our genius picks, and you know what? We blew it a little bit this week, BroMob, so we got a little bit of dumb picks for you to hit up this week. We're sorry. Not so sorry, because we still stick by everything we say, of course. And at the end of the day, it is what it is. We're sorry. And then to finish all up, we've got our waiver review, our hold'em picks, and our trades to go over. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it, BroMob. Just get this going right off the bat. Be sure to follow along after the show by following us on Twitter and Instagram at FF Bros Podcast. And be sure to search that valuable, awesome, unmistakably known around the world as that hashtag BroMob for all of your advice, fun, interesting news, and for terrible things from Brian. Let's get into the show. Fantasy Weekly Recap. All right, BroMob. Well, I'm going to start it off this week by not mentioning games, but first I'm going to mention the Underground League. Pretzels, congratulations, man. You're the only undefeated team in the league. You caught me in a bad week. It is what it is, I guess. I'll give you the round applause right now because you're killing it in the league. I've got back-to-back duds, though. I need to turn it around. I'm not scared. I'm not saying I'm scared, BroMob, but I might get it turned around here quick. Brian, did you get a win pulled off this week?
I got a win in the Underground League. I got a win across the board, Chad. But I will also, except for, like I said, our Dynasty League.
The one league, yeah.
I'll give Pretzels his props. He might be undefeated, but here's the deal, Pretzels. I'm looking at my points scored. I'm looking at your points scored, and I got you beat. So you know what that means? That means nothing. If so facto, you're probably gonna beat me. Still, I don't know why. But
we didn't play-o. Yeah. Is what that means. It doesn't matter.
We haven't played-o.
Raiders and Colts, I should say. The Raiders were able to get a hard-fought win in this one, which is something I didn't expect, to be honest. Their defense turned out being pretty good in this. They were able to hold Marlon Mack to only 39 yards on 11 carries. This could be a sign of how the team may use Marlins. I mean, they were behind quick in this game. We understand that Marlon Mack doesn't get used much in the passing game. So because of that, we didn't see him get used much in the game. It's one of those things we got to pay attention to with him, with his usage and stuff. It was just one of those weird game scripts that we didn't anticipate happening. So Marlon Mack, bad game. Another not so good game, Josh Jacobs, actually. He hasn't really gotten off to the hot start that we were anticipating, especially after that week 1 good game that he had. Since then, he's getting used a lot. It's just the efficiency isn't there, Brian.
Yeah, I just, like you said, he's not getting used in the pass game, and I think that's what's really killing him. He only had 2 catches this week, same as last week. He had 2 catches, I believe. And so I think the Raiders need to get him a little bit more involved in that side of the game. But I mean, at the end of the day, look, you probably hopefully you didn't draft Josh Jacobs in like the first or the second. You got him
Oh no.
deeper. So I'd imagine he's most people's RB2, sometimes maybe even an RB3. So I don't think he's doing terrible to start the season. And I think he'll get better as the year goes on, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, he's a rookie, so he's getting some of that rookie, those nervous jitters out of his way. So one thing that was glaring for the Colts, without T.Y. Hilton, they struggled on offense. So it's clear that they need him back. And once he comes back, it's a good team again. So, all right, let's move into our next game here, the Titans-Falcons game. It's clear that the Falcons need some sort of change, Brian. I mean, it's clear to me now. And that might even mean offensive changes, some big changes offensively, because the team it constantly gets held up. There's dead drives all over the place, and they continue to struggle to be a consistent threat at all on offense. They're either really good or they're really bad. There's no in between, and not keeping steady with anything. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seems to me the run game is where they're lacking. You know, they need to find themselves, find their identity, and that seems to be what they're missing compared to like previous years. You know, and so I think that's going to be the area that I would look at. Freeman so far, probably not the start that they were looking for. I mean, he's yet to have more than 16 carries. He had 12 this past week. He's heavily involved in the passing game. It just feels like they're passing the ball so much.
Yeah.
He had 12 carries on the ground for 28 yards. I mean, from a fantasy output, he wasn't terrible. He had 10 points. He's yet to score a touchdown this year. That's another thing that about Devonta Freeman that's hurting them. And so, all of this load is falling on Matt Ryan's shoulders, and I think that's the problem with that team.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on too with Devonta Freeman, because that's something that he was good at in his past, right? Was scoring touchdowns. He got consistent goal-to-goal carries and was used quite heavily in the red zone. So it's definitely something to be worrisome about. It's just one of those things we're seeing around the league, man. Everybody's passing the ball too much. They're not running the ball. However, the Titans, that's a team that runs the ball. And when they do it well, they win games. Derrick Henry, 27 carries, over 100 yards. Another big game from him. And I've said it before in weeks past, Brian, this team lives and dies by the success or the failure of Marcus Mariota. And look what happened. He had a really good game this week, 3 touchdowns, a really good week. He was able to hook up with rookie A.J. Brown quite a bit, who's showing some real promise there as somebody that can be trusted for Marcus Mariota. But the thing is, he's just too inconsistent. So this team struggles to find his consistency with him as well. What do we got next for Brian?
Yeah, so Redskins-Giants was really a game that I expected to go a little bit differently. The Redskins were absolutely terrible. And so that was not something that I expected. I expected this to be almost kind of like a shootout. I mean, the Giants defense has been hot garbage against the pass this year. And so thus our role of Case Keenum, but he was benched after 4 dead drives. However, the news out of Washington, Chad, is that he looked like he was hurt. There was maybe an ankle or a foot injury. And so it seems like that might be the case. Right now, he's questionable leading into this week. I don't know if that's an excuse or what. I was about to say, I was really shocked.
Is it not just an excuse though? Like, how much of it is maybe because Dwayne Haskins didn't look too good? The rookie got brought in. His first touchdown pass in the NFL was a pick 6. So I mean, he didn't look too good. Are they just coming out and saying, okay, we didn't bench him, guys. We promise. He's a little hurt. So maybe they're covering their own tails. Mr. Jay Gruden, maybe trying to keep his job. I don't know.
Could be. I mean, at the end of the day, I think that the team is just a hot mess. I mean, all around, I don't think they're really running the ball efficiently. They're definitely not playing decent or good, anything I would label as good defense. So on the other side of the ball, you got the Giants, and you had game 2 for Daniel Jones, which wasn't really all that big of a deal. They ran the ball efficiently. Gallman looked like a sturdy RB1, over 100 yards rushing on the day, and it was, I think, a really smart game plan for the Giants. Let's not make don't put the entire load on Daniel Jones. He's a rookie, still. I mean, yeah, he's talented. I think he's going to be fine. but he didn't follow up last week with another blowout, right? I mean, it was a much lower score output, and so this was not the game I expected. It was much more of a defensive or lower scoring game than I anticipated.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brian. What do we got next?
Yeah, Panthers Texans was a really great game. Obviously, Texans. I'm really shocked that the Texans didn't play as well as they probably could have. That offensive line. I mean, we've said it a million times. That offensive line is terrible.
It's really bad.
It's hot garbage. They've allowed the most sacks in the league so far this year. Really, no rushing threat on offense, and Watson's just running for his life. I mean, I think he's going to have a hard time staying healthy this year. On the other side of the ball, the Panthers. I don't know. I mean, Kyle Allen he didn't follow it up with a hot start after last week. But it was the Texans defense, and that Texans front rush or that pass rush is pretty decent. But he didn't need to follow it up. I mean, look at the end of the day, he's got CMC, and Christian McCaffrey is a beast. You know what Christian McCaffrey does really well?
What's that?
Bingo, bango, bongo. Touchdowns.
He does a really good job at winning you games, is what he does.
Yes.
You got so lucky getting a top 3 pick in our league, you bastard. All right, we're gonna move on here to the next game. We got Chargers Dolphins. Guys, listen. Anytime anybody's playing the Dolphins, they get a high school matchup. And that's what the Chargers got here. If there's one, I will be honest though. I've said before that I don't really like anybody in this offense. The more and more I've watched it, Brian, if there's one player that I want to own in the Dolphins, which is not in many places, but if there's a deeper league, I'm looking at somebody to kind of stash maybe for upside. Devontae Parker, he leads the league. He's number 1 in yards per target. It kind of makes sense. They're always down, so they're always slinging the ball. But Devontae Parker's been the one that's really benefiting from all of those deep passes. So Devontae Parker, only name that I really want on this team. I don't even like the running backs. It's usually worth rostering a running back on a team, but I don't like any of these guys. But Devontae Parker is pretty nice. After watching this game, Brian, it's going to be really interesting to see how they kind of ease Melvin Gordon back into the offense, right? Is it going to be an ease, or is he going to get fed by the water hose? It's going to be interesting to see what happens, because Austin Eckler, man, he's put himself together a nice little beginning of the season here.
I think it's going to be a timeshare. I think I don't see any way they can not give Eckler some opportunities, and I think Gordon slowly gets phased in. So I think Eckler is still a serviceable play as an RB2 going forward.
If not an RB2, then definitely a flex play. I think he's a solid flex play going forward. He's definitely going to get used in the passing game. In PPR leagues, that's going to be very valuable for you. So I agree. I think he's still going to be a good play. I think both of them are going to be good plays for your teams. Let's move into the next game here. We got the Chiefs-Lions game, which was a lot more competitive than myself, and I think a lot of people anticipated here. The Lions really put up a fight. It was up until the last minute of this game that the Chiefs didn't actually get away with it. And it's actually one of the better games that I watched this week. So Detroit's defense, man, they're actually better than advertised in most circumstances. They've done pretty well against all teams this year. And you know what? They're the only team that's stopped Patrick Mahomes from throwing a touchdown. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Chad, about the Lions is the Lions are 2 plays away from being undefeated.
They really are.
If you think about it, they were 1 play, which Patricia called a timeout, and Stafford was furious week 1 against the Cardinals, where they could have put it away, and that play ended up it resulted in a first down that after the timeout got pulled back, and then they ended up having a punt after that, and that caused them to go into overtime, and they tied. And then this week on a 4th and 8, Pat Mahomes needed 9 yards or 8 yards, and he got 9. And they ended up winning the game. So, I mean, that's how close the Lions are to being undefeated right now, which I'm really impressed. So I got my hat's off to Matt Patricia. I think he's done a really good job.
Like you said, Matt Patricia, that's where I was going to go to. It's been really good coaching. It's not necessarily the prettiest football, right, when you're watching it, but they're keeping themselves in games and they're winning. So it's pretty cool. Brian, what do we got next for games? I mean, actually, I think we got a really good game next, don't we?
So this Browns-Ravens game was a little shocking, to be honest. I did not see that coming. look, at the end of the day, I was really shocked because the Browns actually looked good. They actually ran the ball. You had Nick Chubb heavily involved, and that looked like a recipe for success for them.
Yes.
If they could come out every week with the mindset of we're going to run the ball, we're going to be a heavy run team that sets up play action. Don't put all the load on Baker Mayfield. Here's the problem with that. I can't see OBJ being okay with that. He had 2 catches on the day. And I don't know if you saw this, but he almost got killed. Did you see the Ravens cornerback? I can't remember his name right now. I'm having a brain block.
Humphrey.
Yes. Humphrey literally almost choked him to death on the field.
OBJ
tried to commit murder. He tried to commit murder. OBJ, I think OBJ actually died for half a second. A good half a second.
All I could picture was that guy from Happy Gilmore with the nail in his head, just going, and I'll meet you outside in the parking lot. And OBJ's like, ooh.
Somebody posted a picture of Homer choking Bart Simpson and said results of today's Browns game. So I thought that was pretty cute. Kudos. So anyway, the Browns shocked the Ravens. This was, I think everybody expected the Ravens to win this game. We'll see. I don't know. The Browns are such a roller coaster this year. They looked like a dumpster fire after last week. This week they come in, they bulldoze the Ravens against a really good defense. So we'll see what happens. And then on the other side of the ball, look, Lamar Jackson struggled a little bit, but it was serviceable from a fantasy standpoint. I think they just keep doing what they're doing. Just keep doing what they're doing. You're going to have games like this where it's rough, but Lamar Jackson I'm still convinced. I don't know about you.
This is his thing, right? I mean, he's going to have good fantasy weeks every week, even if he didn't have a good quarterback week. Does that make sense? Like, he didn't have a good week. He was actually able to clear this up with a deep ball to Willie Snead to end the game. And that's really what kind of cleaned up his stats there, because it wasn't looking good. It was that last play, but that's his thing, right? Because of the threat of his legs, it opens up the deep ball in his passing game. So it's from week to week, he's got one of the highest floors, if not the highest floor, next to Patrick Mahomes there is at quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, 9 carries for 66 yards on the ground.
That's why.
It's not bad. He went 247. He had 3 touchdowns on the day. The 2 picks, hurt obviously the team, but from a fantasy standpoint, not a bad day. Next game, Chad, was Bills Patriots, and I actually watched this game. This was a fun game to watch. It was heavy defensive, exactly what we talked about. It was a gritty, grindy type of game. Josh Allen ended up getting hurt, and really didn't look all that great before he got hurt either. But I think at the end of the day, Brady kind of struggled on the other side of the ball too, which is going to happen when you're playing the Bills. That's a tough defense. Final score 16-10. And really there was a couple points where I thought the Bills could probably take the lead. It was a really good game. I enjoyed watching it. I like defensive games. I don't know why.
Yeah, it was a high defensive game, and I mean, you being also again the benefactor of having the Pats defense, but this defense has been doing nothing but scoring points for fantasy football teams this year. And look at their schedule; it makes sense, right? I mean, all these teams that they've been going against, all these quarterbacks, it's primed.
Did you know that I heard this stat today, and I actually had to look it up? The Patriots defense this year has scored. The defense has scored more points than they've actually allowed.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's how ridiculous they've been this year. So yeah, hey, look, again, I'll say it. You guys could have drafted him.
Mm-hmm. Keep it down over there. All right, let's speak about ridiculous, Brian, because I just watched the Tampa Bay Jameis Winstons move into a really good Los Angeles Rams team and put up 55 points against that defense. Brian, I got to ask, 4 touchdowns, 385 yards for Jameis. Is this a sign, A, that he's learned that offense finally, because it's back-to-back good weeks for the guy, or is this a sign that this Rams defense is much worse than we ever thought it was?
No, I think it's the first of those two. Look, Winston got off to a bad start against San Francisco, and it's a new offense, but he's got weapons to throw to. Yep. Back-to-back games of 300-plus yards, 7 touchdowns in 2 games. look, at the end of the day, only 2 picks in that time span. He has been straight hot fire. I mean, so after a game and a half, 2 games of straight dumpster fire, he's come back to be extremely great. And so here's the problem. He draws a tough defense next week. They play in New Orleans. You just saw what they did to the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I'm not playing Jameis Winston next week. Are you kidding me? There's no way.
Yeah, maybe, probably not. It's a pretty tough defense, especially in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Another guy that kind of stood out in this game, though, Brian, from a fantasy perspective,
Spur with like the spur that you kick a horse with, like a
yes,
spurspective.
Spurspective. You kick a horse.
Got it.
And you giddy up. Jared Goff finally giddied up in this game. He had over 500 yards passing, numerous different touchdowns. But you know what? If you watched the game, he didn't look good, actually. I was actually very surprised that he had 500 yards passing. It makes sense they had to pass the ball the entire game, but watching him, he put together some really costly turnovers, some really bad throws, and didn't look very comfortable in the game, Brian, against the defense that surprisingly has been pretty good this year now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the run game just isn't looking good. Gurley, 5 carries for just over 10 yards in this one. He had a good fantasy week, but that was because he saved you with a couple of touchdowns on the ground and just finding that pay dirt, right? Without those, Gurley was a non-factor in this game. And that's kind of been the story all season, that he hasn't looked himself. He's not doing well. And because of that, they're not able to set up the play action. Goff isn't as comfortable. He's not finding the open receiver as quickly as he was last year. It's concerning.
Yeah, if I'm a Todd Gurley owner, I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
There's no way that you can continue to expect 5 carries for 16 yards and 2 touchdowns to be something that's sustainable. His involvement in the passing game has kept him alive, and I'm freaking out a little bit on Todd Gurley. If I'm a Gurley owner, I mean, here's the question, Chad: do you try to sell him right now? I mean, he's from a fantasy standpoint, you've got a top. He still has name value, right? Mm-hmm. He 10 points, 12 points, 4.3, and then a 19. Do you try to get rid of him now with the lineup of going to Seattle? Then you got San Francisco at home. Then they're on the road against Atlanta. Then you got Cincinnati in a bye week. Their playoff schedule is home against Seattle, Cowboys, San Francisco. All 3 of those defenses strong against the run.
I mean, I'll be honest, I only heard 2 games in there that I like, and that's the Atlanta-Cincinnati games. Everything else there is a tough matchup for Gurley. I'd be selling the living daylights out of the guy right now when you can. His value is no higher than it could be all season. Look, he's still sharing that backfield with Malcolm Brown, the guy, which, by the way, Malcolm Brown has been no pushover. He actually leads the league in missed tackle rate, or broken tackle rate, at 35%. It's almost 10% higher than the next closest running back, Mark Ingram. So Brown's been stringing together some really good runs there, and he's really good at keeping Gurley healthy, I guess, but Gurley's not looking good. I'd be trying to trade him now.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Keep things rolling along. We got the Seahawks-Cardinals game. This game went about what I was expecting, right? Seahawks were able to kind of dominate. I thought the Cardinals would do a little bit better than they did, but Seahawks a very good football team. Their defense looked very good in this. They were able to keep Kyler Murray from passing any touchdowns in this one. They got an interception, a costly interception. Jadeveon Clowney took it to the house on them. And you know what? Chris Carson was used heavily. They came out and said, listen, we understand he's fumbling. We trust in him. We're going to keep giving it to him. And they did just that. He had over 20 carries, really good game. And Will Dissly continues to grow more and more of the offensive share of this team. Brian, are you buying the Dissly?
Oh, heavily. Yeah, I think I said that last week. I was finally convinced. And I know you and I both said start him this week. Hopefully you listened. Yeah, I'm all in on Dissly. I think he seems to be a really favored red zone target for Russell Wilson. Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, absolutely. He's almost a weekly start at this point. Yeah, Chad. So the next game, Vikings-Bears. I don't know if you caught this one. This is a really ugly game for for Cousins.
Both
Thielen
sides.
didn't look very happy. Yeah, really, no kidding. Thielen wasn't happy after the game. I had some words to say. Look, the Vikings are paying over $200 million for Cousin, Diggs, and Thielen. This is not what they expected. It
No.
can't be, right?
I mean, they're one of the worst passing attacks in the league. Of course they didn't
Yeah, I mean,
guess this.
here's the question is, do you think it's the scheme or do you think Cousins is just really not good?
I think there's a bit of a mixture there. Cousins hasn't looked good at all. And because, I mean, literally the guy has been throwing some of the most uncatchable passes in the league. He's one of the league leaders, up there with Cam Newton when he was healthy, of course, throwing uncatchable passes. So though the scheme has been heavy run and it doesn't really feed any of those receivers as much as you would hope it would. At the same time, whenever they are looking to feed those receivers, Cousins isn't stepping up, man. He does not look good.
Yeah, on the other side of the ball, you had Trubisky go down, dislocated shoulder. It sounds like he's going to be out for a little bit of time now. Chase Daniel stepped in and did pretty well. Actually, he was pretty serviceable. Offense continued to struggle though, so this was another game that was kind of gritty, grindy. I'll use that word a lot.
Bacon and grits.
Bacon and grits, gritting and grinding.
Gritting and grinding.
Sounds weird. So Bears squeaked out a win there. Another game on the docket here was Jags Broncos. Gardner Minshew didn't look as good as last week, but 0-2, or I'm sorry, 0-2. Geez, 2-0 as the starter now. Looks pretty good. I mean, Leo had a huge game rushing the ball, and on the other side of the ball, you had the Broncos. Cortland Sutton had right now is on pace for over 120 targets on the season. Sutton finished the game, Chad, with 6 catches, 62 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So not a bad game for him. Manny Sanders, a lot of targets there too. 5 catches for over 100 yards. He didn't get in the paint, but still had a pretty decent game. If you happen to be thin at wideout and had to start him, he turned out to be decent for you. And then Noah Fant, 2 catches, 31 yards, but he got in the end zone. So this is a team. Flacco seems to be kind of starting to figure it out a bit. I don't know. I mean, it's Joe Flacco. I try not to get too excited about Joe Flacco, but 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not a bad day for the Flack.
Flack attack is here.
Flack attack.
Yeah, I mean, it was Ramsey wasn't playing. Jalen Ramsey wasn't there, and it was clear Flacco was able to hit on some of them lesser known with a D. I can't speak today, guys.
D, capital D.
Known. He was able to hit some of those lesser known corners out there, so it was an okay game for him. All right, let's move into our last 2 games here, BroMob. We got the Cowboys-Saints game. We've already alluded to it. The Cowboys put up a stinker in this one. I don't want to talk about it, but I need to because you guys need to hear the news from the game. Dak looked terrible. He had a really poor game in this one. Zeke looked even worse in my eyes. If you watched him, he just kept running into fronts time after time again. And you know what? Nobody really looked good. Amari Cooper couldn't hold his own. Jason Witten had a costly fumble, which is weird because the guy doesn't fumble. He's got 9 total fumbles in his entire career, and he fumbles once every millennium, basically. So bad game all around for the team. And then it was just a very defensive game, Brian.
Yeah. Here's the question, Chad, is, I don't know. I mean, you could look at this in a lot of different ways. You could say, oh my God, Cowboys look terrible. Or you could say, man, the Saints defense was really freaking good. Like they were smothering. I mean, they looked great. That stadium was loud. I mean, was the Saints Cowboys games has become such a great like rivalry over the last few years. And the Saints always play Dallas really hard, and same for Cowboys versus Saints. Cowboys always play them tough. Dak was, I know you said Dak was terrible. I didn't think he was. Look, at the end of the day, you could look at it like this. Dallas defense, both of these defenses played lights out.
Yeah.
Saints couldn't score a touchdown. They had 4 field goals, won the game.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, Dak, had a pick, 200 yards passing, 22 for 33 on the day. And at the end of the day, he was in a position coming down the field at the end of the game almost and trying to win it. So, Witten, yeah, fumbled. Zeke had a fumble that shouldn't have been a fumble. I don't care what the NFL says. That was not a fumble. His freaking elbow was down.
Yeah, I
That should
agree.
have been overruled. But, here at the end of the day, not a good fantasy output, right? And so
Yeah.
I think better days ahead. This I felt like this could be a trap game for them, and it turned out it was. So
Yeah, very true. All right, we're going to move into the last game here. We got Eagles Packers, and this was a very good game. Watching this, Rodgers, I'm going to say it now. People say Rodgers was the reason they kept him in the game, but I thought he looked very out of sync at times. Couldn't connect with certain receivers from time to time. Was making some of the bad reads also, which is something you don't normally see from Rodgers. He normally plays incredibly smart. That interception at the end of the game, hindsight's 50-50, but Brian, you even said it while we were watching it. All he needed to do was do one pump fake, and he had the guy wide open in the corner of the field at the post route. So, and that's something that he normally capitalizes on. So it's weird to look at here. The Packers defense was held in check in this one. I mean, they weren't as elite as everybody was playing them out to be. Eagles were able to score over and over and over again on them. And the big storyline here, though, is that the Eagles just continue to drop passes like crazy. It's clearly frustrating Carson Wentz. It was nice to have Alshon Jeffrey back, but even he had a couple of costly drops in this game. So it's just something that it looks like it's going to be something to worry about for the remainder of the season, to be honest. Carson Wentz putting up very similar stat line to his MVP season, yet somehow people are talking about him not being the same, which is weird to me. And that's because of these drops. The team's just not winning the games because of this.
Well, and I think too, it's the offensive line, which took a 180. They showed up,
and they woke up
in this game. The Eagles were able to run the ball very efficiently. Over I think total of 26 carries for close to like 150 yards nearly, and so it was a really good game for them. Green Bay, complete opposite story. Aaron Rodgers threw the ball 53 times. The pick at the end of the game, I know you and I talked about that with the pump, but I'll also say this, man, run the ball, turn around and at least give one run play, give them a chance to where the defense doesn't know that, okay, they're going to throw it every single time. Yeah. I think if you would have given it to Aaron Jones, he scored on a 2-yard play earlier in the game. Give him a chance. So, I just think there could have been better play calling, and maybe that has something to do with the new coaching staff, and they're still learning. So, but look, at the end of the day, I think the Packers have bounced back. This was it's a Thursday night game. Those games are always tough on defenses. They seem to always be kind of a shootout type game, and so this was I'm not surprised it ended up the way it was.
Yep, agreed. It was a very good game. All right, BroMob, let's move into our next segment here and talk about our good picks.
Genius, genius, genius!
All right, so last week, BroMob, one of my stream picks was the Panthers defense. I mentioned the fact that I believed this team was going to come out and get sacks galore on this worst offensive line and just destroy Watson all game, and that's what happened. 10 points allowed only, 6 sacks, 1 interception, and 1 fumble. They got you 15 points. I hope you put them in your lineups, BroMob. My next stream, Eric Ebron. I don't care what happened. I got saved by it, but he got 1 catch for 48 yards and a touchdown, 11.3 fantasy points. He's a really good stream option because of this. He kept you sweating for most of the game, but at the end of the day, he got you a good output, BroMob. I told you to sit Josh Allen. Very tough. Patriots defense hadn't allowed an offensive touchdown all season. And man, he certainly did disappoint. 13 for 28, 153 yards, no touchdowns, 5 carries for 26, and he got saved by 1 rushing touchdown. He only had 8.7 fantasy points, Brian. And then finally, you and I both agreed on this one. We've got Amari Cooper, 5 catches, 48 yards for 7.3 points only. Not a good week for him. Oh boy. Okay, so we've got James Conner going underneath a tent, getting checked out for possible injury here. Jalen Samuels comes in to the game. Wow, this could be big news, Brian.
Yeah, it is. It just happened. I watched it, and doesn't look good for the Steelers. That's not what you want to see. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it, BroMob. All you James Conner, not only fans but owners out there. Hopefully nothing serious. We'll keep you in the loop. Now, I'll be honest, Chad, I didn't have a lot this week, but I did have a few. I did say to start Austin Eckler this week. I know with the news about Josh Gordon coming out, everybody was excited about that. And then, right as we led into game time, that was announced that, he would be active for the game. However, it was Austin Eckler that shined in this game. So 18 carries, 60 yards. He had a tutty on the ground, and then added 5 catches for 62 and a touchdown, 26.7 points. Austin Eckler, like we talked about earlier, Chad, I think he's still going to be, I think, the guy you want to own there for a little bit. And maybe this could turn into like a Saints situation where you've got 2 serviceable running backs coming out of the same backfield, don't you think?
I mean, it could. Melvin Gordon's a very good running back, but so was Alvin Kamara back when he had Mark Ingram there. Latavius Murray still takes carries, so it's good to keep these guys healthy throughout the season. That's the biggest thing, because we're all playing for the championship game, right? So keeping those guys healthy is a big thing.
Yeah, Chad. So my other pick, I said to start Kenny Golladay. Had a great game against that Chiefs secondary. 5 catches, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns on the day, 21.2 points. And then also sit O.J. Howard. I said that I thought the comeback was going to end pretty quick. He had 3 catches for 33 yards, 4.8 points. So hopefully BroMob at least listened to those recommendations.
All right, let's move into the recommendations that they probably shouldn't have listened to, Brian. Let's get into our dum-dum picks.
You blew it!
All right, BroMob. Well, I definitely blew it on my very first one here. I said to stream Case Keenum. As we mentioned before, he took 4. He went to 4 drives in this game and was taken out of the game, and actually ended with negative fantasy points. Hey, I was there with you. I started him in a couple of leagues of mine, and he didn't do too hot for me. Luckily, I had some other players that exploded for me, kept me in the games. But Case Keenum, that was a painful one. Sorry about that, BroMob. My next one, I told you to start Russell Wilson. Danger Russell was more danger than he was the good side of the Russell Wilson side. 14 fantasy points. This was a very defensive game, as we mentioned before. Kyler Murray was held in check. So was Russell Wilson. It was just a really close game for most of it. And once the defensive touchdown came from Jadeveon Clowney, it really cleared the things up for everybody else to kind of just run the ball.
You're having a hard time talking today. I
can't speak
English. I can't talk. I'm having a bad day today too. Maybe we had too much fun this past weekend. I don't know.
Maybe.
All right. So I screwed up in a couple spots here this week. BroMob, apologize. Start Dak Prescott. Figured, look, the Saints defense had been giving up a ton of points to opposing quarterbacks. Dak's on a roll. Couldn't have been farther from the truth. He had 7.6 points. Couldn't even make it to a 10. Not a good game. Also said to sit Dalvin Cook, which, by the way, was not a terrible recommendation. He just got into the end zone, and that saved his day. So
at the end of the game too.
Yeah, really at the end of the game. So he wasn't having a good game until really he kind of pulled it together right at the very end for you. But still, 16 points is 16 points. Start Rams defense. They gave you 0 points. My bad. That was a really bad one. And then stream Daniel Jones. So 12.3 points. Just figured, look, he's playing the Redskins. They should be able to piggyback off last week. Couldn't have been further from. They just ran the ball a lot. That was the thing. And so that not a good game from him. And then streaming the Colts defense against the Oakland Raiders. Who would have thunk it? My bad, 2 points.
All right, BroMob, we are terribly sorry for these picks. We promise to do better this week. We got you. Don't worry. We'll make up for it. All right, let's move into our final segment, BroMob. Hit up those waiver ads, our hold'em picks, and talk a little trades. All right, well, the waiver wires are they've got some big names in there right now, Brian. I'm going to start it off with the first one here. He's owned in a lot of leagues, but he's definitely available in a lot as well. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, owned in 66.6% of ESPN leagues. Very October-y number right there, very Halloween-y. Listen, he's the new starting wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers, with Devontae Adams going down with that turf toe. Marquez Valdez-Scantling could become, I don't want to say a league winner because I don't want to jinx it because I got him in a lot of leagues, but man, this guy could turn into something really big for your teams. Brian, who else you got in the waivers this week?
Yeah, so wide receiver Deontay Johnson from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, I think he's an up and coming talent, and should get more and more involved. Right now, they're in the third quarter, and he's got 4 catches for 28 on the night. It is Cincinnati defense, but we'll see what happens. See how it finishes. Ultimately, not the start you'd want. He's only got 2.8 points on the day, but still, could be heavily involved. Only owned in 1.8% of ESPN leagues, so he could be kind of more of a deep sleeper guy for you to kind of finish up the season.
Yeah, not very impressive with points there, Brian, but the volume is there, right? He's getting targeted. Mason Rudolph seems to like him, so that's where the good thing is. There's upside to him. I'm gonna stick with the same team here, and the funny thing is, I had him in here before BroMob, before this injury that we saw with James Conner, Jalen Samuels, for this exact reason. James Conner's injury prone. And actually, if you were watching this game before the injury, they were splitting this backfield pretty 50-50 throughout it, and both backs were looking good in it. Jalen Samuels, now, if Connor were to be out for any extended period of time, he's starting running back for a team that does pretty well with running backs. So he's only owned in 19.2% of ESPN leagues, BroMob. Go out and get him wherever you can.
Chad, Golden Tate, the wide receiver for the New York Giants, only owned in 51% of ESPN leagues. Comes back from suspension this coming week, and he could be a guy that gets worked in and is heavily involved in this team's passing game moving forward. So you definitely want to try to get him on the team.
All right, BroMob. Well, DJ Chark, still on the waiver wires. He's owned in 66% of ESPN leagues, but he's clearly Detective Minshew's favorite target on this team, and he's actually pretty electric talent. He looks good out there, so he had a little bit lower of a week, but still at the same time, you should be getting him because he's getting targeted heavily.
Yeah, Chad. Hey, real quick update on the James Conner news. It looks like he's fine. So
still get Jalen
nothing
Samuels.
to see there, but still
go get Jalen Samuels. It's a 50-50 split in this backfield so far in this game, and it's worth the value.
Yeah, Samuels is having a game. So, yeah, you don't want to not own Jalen Samuels, especially if you're the James Conner owner. So, yes. Yeah, I agree with you completely. Chad, James O'Shaughnessy, I say this wrong every time.
You got
James
it.
O'Shaughnessy, but I know I said it right this time. Tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars, had himself a game this week, only owned in 2.6% of leagues. And look, Gardner Minshew I think he seems to like the guy. So I would I'd definitely try to get him on the team, especially if you're light in the tight end area. I would say he's a guy that you should target as a possible flex play.
Yeah, that was back-to-back serviceable weeks for the tight end, and especially at the tight end position where you're looking for consistency. He's definitely put it up for the past 2 weeks, and it just so happens that Gardner Minshew has been the starter for 2 weeks. So definitely worth the flyer. All right, let's move into our hold'ems, Brian. I'm going to start it off with a big name here, DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not coming out and saying we should be doing anything drastic, but my question to you: do you trade DeAndre Hopkins right now due to fear, like oh my god, he hasn't been doing good, or are you going to hold on to him?
No, I'm definitely hanging on to him. If you have Hopkins, you don't want to trade him unless you happen to be injury depleted, and he's a big name that could get you a couple players that would help you move forward. That'd be the only time I'd be looking to move him. But yeah, I don't want to lose an elite wide receiver like DeAndre Hopkins if I don't have to.
Yeah, don't trade him for. We saw a trade on Twitter the other day that showed someone traded DeAndre Hopkins pretty straight up for Derrick Henry because they needed running back depth. Don't go out and do that. Look, I know Derrick Henry, he's a good running back, right? He gets touchdowns, he gets used a lot in his offense. But DeAndre Hopkins, we're talking about the best wide receiver in football, in fantasy football. Though he's had some bad weeks strung together, he's bound to have some positive regression come into this entire season. So don't trade him for next to nothing like that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. The other guy, Chad, David Johnson, look, I don't think he's having the season that everybody had hoped he would have coming into this year. I mean, you have a new offense. They said they wanted to feature him heavily coming into the season, which they are. It's just not on the ground. It's through the air. And so David Johnson, the last 3 weeks, 7 carries, 11 carries, 11 carries. He's yet to eclipse 100 yards on the ground yet. But he's still putting up good fantasy points. So I would say you don't want to get rid of him yet. I would hang on to him. The only way I'm trading him is if I can upgrade him. That's it.
43-yard touchdown to Deontay Johnson. So big play there for the rookie wide receiver. I think I would try to trade him right now. Look, he's put together some decent fantasy weeks for you, off of what seems to be, like you said, a light workload. If that continues to happen, I don't know if I want to necessarily deal with people getting points by short yardage touchdowns, saving you for the week. It's a headache. If I can trade them for a little bit more consistency and a little bit more ease in my stomach, if that makes sense, I'm definitely going to try and do so.
Yeah, I just think it depends on what your expectations are for David Johnson. A lot of people drafted him in the top 6 picks, and he's not going to give you that return. It doesn't seem like anyway. I don't see him being a 20 carry guy every week. You've got four weeks now of this new offense. I think you're going to see what you've seen so far going forward. So if that's not something you're wanting, which I actually tend to like the involvement in the passing game, half PPR, or even full PPR point leagues, David Johnson's very valuable. And so it just depends on the league set that you're in and what else you have. If you can add him to somebody else that you might have on your bench, a wide receiver or somebody like that, and you can upgrade him, yeah, I'm not against it, but I'm also not against keeping him.
All right, let's move into our next guy here. A guy that we should be talking about, Leo Fournette. Are you holding or are you trading right now?
Yeah, no, I'm moving off Fournette if I had him. So he's a guy that I get it. He's a guy that gets a lot of workload, but this is the first game this year that he's had more than 15 carries in a game, nearly doubled that. 225 yards on the ground, first time over 65 yards. Nope, I'm sorry, 66 yards that he's had on the season. He had yet to have more than 100 yards on the ground. If you can use this game to move him, I would move him, and I would move him quick, really fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be getting rid of this guy quickly.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into our last one here. Austin Eckler, Brian. What are we doing with him? We talked about him being a solid flex. This was a big week for him. He had a good game again. Are you trading him high? Because I don't see him scoring these high 20 games consistently anymore. He's more of like the mid-teens, lower teens type of scorer now with Melvin Gordon vulturing touchdowns from him possibly. Are you trading high?
Yeah, here's the thing with Eckler is his value, even though he's crushing it right through these first 4 games, his value has plummeted because of the thought of Gordon coming back and Gordon's expected involvement, which is going to happen, right? So I think you got to hold him. And here's why. Melvin Gordon has an injury history. And the moment that if you only have Eckler, you most likely got him in the 5th or the 4th, 5th, or 6th round, somewhere in that range. If that's the case, he was never your RB1 anyway. So he has outperformed grossly his draft pick capital, right? And so you should have a serviceable running back already in addition to him. And if you're 4-0 because you had Eckler, well then, hey, he helped you get 4 wins. Now he's going to be that flex kind of guy, maybe a mid of the pack or low end RB2 most likely. He'll have great games and not so great games. Likely kind of goes back to that role. I would keep him or try to trade him to the Melvin Gordon owner as a handcuff. But I don't think if you can't do that, I would just keep him and wait for Gordon. Wait to see what you can get. I mean, at this point, he probably gave you 4 wins that you would have never had if Gordon would have played.
Speaking of trades, let's move into some players that we think we could trade for right now. And I'm going to start it off with a big name, and then the last 2 are some small, I'd say some smaller names cannot come out of these here. But the first trade I'd like to go after, George Kittle. He's coming off a bye. The owner that has him might have possibly lost if they had picked up some other tight end off of waivers and didn't score him very good points this week. And if that's the case, they might be looking to trade him over and get some running back help or some wide receiver help. Look, George Kittle is in top 5 right now for target share at the tight end position. He just hasn't gotten the touchdowns yet to start putting together some really big weeks for you. That's bound to happen here soon. Jimmy Garoppolo is getting better every week that he's playing. This offense is top 5 in offensive yardage. Their defense is top 5 in defensive yardage allowed. It's a good team. And George Kittle bound to start getting some touchdowns, especially with how explosive and how big of a playmaker is. I'm trying to trade for George Kittle right now. I'll be honest, I'd probably be willing to give up somebody like Kerryon Johnson for George Kittle, to be in all honesty here. If I could do a 1-for-1 trade, the team's a little bit weak on running back there, I'd be willing to help him out.
Yeah, Chad, I don't know. I think I agree with you to an extent. I would not overpay for Kittle. I would try to get Kittle for a lukewarm value because, I mean, his upcoming schedule is not all that great for tight ends. He's got a stretch between weeks 9 and 11 where he plays Arizona twice and Seattle, and they're pretty weak against tight ends. But what I look at specifically is his playoff schedule. He's got week 14 New Orleans, 15 Atlanta, and 16 the Rams, and those are all 3 tough defenses against the tight end. And so, I think Kittle's an elite guy, and I get it, top 5 in targets. You definitely want to try to buy that, but I wouldn't trade away. I like Kerryon Johnson. He's going to be that. I think he's going to be that surprise rig going forward that gets a lot of touches, a lot of carries. He's involved in the passing game. I don't know that I would be trading him for Kittle when I already am getting the value that I want out of a guy. I'd almost rather just stream. But if you can upgrade and somebody and get Kittle, I would definitely look at that for sure.
All right, what's your thoughts on David Montgomery, Brian? Because I'll be honest, I kind of like him now that Trubisky's out.
Well, and so here's the thing: they're I mean, this is just one game, so I want to be careful. But they're actually using him more in the rushing game, which is what you want. I also like buying him if you can, because after week 10. His matchups are cake for the running back position. So you're going to have a lot of really good running back position type games where he should have favorable matchups. And also, it's the Bears. They play outdoors in the cold. That sets up well for running teams. And so I like David Montgomery a lot. If you have him, I would keep him. If you don't, I'd try to get him on the cheap if you could. Yeah,
agreed. I think that's what it is right now, right? He's on the cheap. Because owners that have him, they're just not happy with him. So he's got some greener pastures ahead of him. All right, let's end it here with a guy that we already talked about. He's on pace for over 120 targets. Courtland Sutton in Denver. Are you looking? I mean, in my honest opinion, if you have him, I'm going to trade him right now because he's put together 3 good weeks in fantasy football for you. And there's not too much to like about Joe Flacco, as we all know. Courtland Sutton, he's probably about as high value as you could possibly get for him. Try to trade him for somebody. Hell, I'd trade him for somebody on the same team, Phillip Lindsay. Not a bad pick there for a running back that could be a flex start for you from week to week. Whereas Courtland Sutton, I doubt you're starting him from week to week.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I would say if you have him, see if you can't add 2 players together and go get somebody. If you don't have him, I would probably say stay away.
Yeah, I agree. All right, BroMob. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday and Wednesday to stay up to date on the fantasy football world and to gather any insights on how to dominate your fantasy football leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure that you head over to jointhebromob.com, become an official BroMobster. We appreciate all the support you guys give us, and really looking forward to seeing our BroMob continue to grow.
If you aren't on Apple Podcasts, we're also on Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. We're literally everywhere. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FFBros Podcast, and be sure to check out our website, thefantasyfootballbros.com, for all kinds of articles, rankings, and just so much more. See you tomorrow, BroMob.
Bye, everybody.